Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we will be reading 1 Samuel chapter 21, but I just wanted to demonstrate how to navigate our resource, BibleHub.com. I tried to use it earlier and I got confused. So, okay, this is the landing page. To pull up the English and Hebrew translation, because Hebrew is the original language of the Bible, we would click here on interlinear. And that brings up just the first verse. That's the default. You have to click for chapter. And then you go to the very top to navigate uh okay, which one you want to use. And so now we have our resource pulled up. 1 Samuel chapter 21. Good old King James. Then came David to Nob to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand, or what there is present. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under mine hand, but there is hallowed bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth women have been kept from us about these 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessel. So the priest gave to him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there but the shew bread that was taken from before the Lord to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul. And David said unto Ahimelech, And is there not here under thine hand spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, The sword of Goliath, the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, There is none like that, give it me. And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said unto him, Is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish the king of Gath. And he changed his behavior before them, and feigned himself mad in their hands, and scrabbled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. Then Achish said unto his servants, Lo, ye see the man is mad? Wherefore then have ye bought him to me? Have I need of mad men, that ye have bought this fellow to play the madmen in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? Summarizing 1 Samuel 21, David flees to priest Ahimelech. He says he's on official business from the king. David says that his servants are nearby, and he asks for 5 loaves of bread. The priest inquires about his recent sexual behavior because the bread is holy or hallowed. David assures the priest that he and his servants have abstained from sex for at least 3 days. The priest gives David bread. We don't know what the amount of bread was because he specifically asked for 5 loaves. David notices some of Saul's employees at the church to worship. He asks the priest for a sword, and priest Ahimelech gives David Goliath's sword. David flees to the king of Gath, who makes David uncomfortable with his line of questioning. So David pretends to be crazy, letting spittle fall into his beard. The king gets mad at his staff for allowing David in. Okay, so 1 Samuel 21, to summarize, in chapter 20, David and Jonathan devise a plan to test Saul so that they can see if David is safe in King Saul's kingdom. Saul tries to kill Jonathan, And he's also tried to kill David 3 different times. In this chapter, chapter 20, Jonathan decides that it is not safe for David, um, and David decides to flee. Also, we want to keep in mind that Saul is David's boss and father in law and king of the land. David is also Jonathan's friend, and Jonathan is King Saul's son. Saul, who has demonstrated fear as a leader multiple times, becomes jealous of David, who is confident and well loved in Israel. Samuel, who is Israel's last judge, he has anointed David to be king of Israel. The Bible is not clear if King Saul knows that David is next, but there is a curious piece of information. He hints that he knows David is going to be chosen in this chapter, chapter 20, verse 31, because he tells Jonathan when Jonathan asks Saul, like, well, what did David do to you? And Saul said, don't you understand? You can't inherit the kingdom while David is still alive. So for him to say something like that, he must have some sort of insight or some sort of inkling, some kind of way, that David is going to be the next king of Israel. So, verse 1, David has fled Saul's kingdom and arrives at Nob or Nob. I want to call it Nob because that makes me feel better. So, uh, David arrives at a place called Nob. He visits Ahimelech, the priest, who is afraid immediately, and he questions David. He asks him why he's alone. David lies, saying that he is on a private mission on behalf of the king. Verse 2 and 3, David asks, what do you have to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread. Verse 4, the priest says, I don't have any common bread. I only have holy or hallowed bread. But that's only if the young men that you're with have kept themselves from women or have abstained from sex. And I just wanted to highlight this here because uh, we see in the New Living Translation, have not slept with any women recently. The reason why I want to highlight this is because David is running for his life. He approaches the church for food, and the priest first responds to him in fear. Secondly, he inquires about David's past behavior before giving him some food. I also want to point out when it comes to language, how God, or I don't want to, how these people are referred to. When we look at Saul, when we look at the priest, Ahimelech, you see how it says Ahimelech the priest? When we get down to the bottom, you see Saul, Ahish, the king of Gath. I just want to point that out because these titles are not part of their name. If just want to put that out there. So we don't have priest Ahimelech. It's just Ahimelech, who is the priest, helping to describe who this man is in the story. Just want to put that out there. So the other thing that I thought about was Exodus chapter 19, verse 15, which might be the reason why. So this is Exodus chapter 19 is when the Israelites were in the wilderness. God says he wants to show himself to the Israelites, manifest, and he tells the Israelites to stay away from their wives or don't have sex. And seems like don't have sex for 3 days, but I don't feel like that's clear either. If we look at these translations, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because David is asking for food from a priest. When we think about what kind of priest Samuel is, Samuel was able, when he anointed King Saul, to predict what Saul was going to experience that day, three different events. He was able to predict what was going to happen with King Saul. He was going to not be so great of a leader. And when we look at what his role is as a priest, and then we look at this person who David is coming to him for food, and he's saying, well, okay, have you had sex? Interested in his sexual life, which we don't see God making a command against sex before marriage or against having sex, and this there is no law about this. Now, what there is a law on was the food, the provision that was given to the church for the priest. He was supposed to be the only one eating it, but I don't know. I just feel like this is sort of strange. Shouldn't the priest be close enough to God to be able to sense when someone's in danger? He just, I don't know. He said, this seems like a different type of priest than Samuel. But this man is not a leader uh, of Israel. He's not a judge the same way that Samuel is. So I know that's just long-winded explanation, but I just wanted to say that. Okay, so David asked the priest, do you have some bread? The priest says, I only have holy bread. Have you abstained from sex? David says, yes, we have all abstained from sex, and this bread seems like it was put here for me. So the priest gave David bread in verse 6. Verse 7, David notices that some of Saul's men were there at the, you know, house of the Lord, because it doesn't really give us what the name of this place is. It just says he to Ahimelech the priest. So I'm calling it church, but because I just don't have a better word for it. So, okay. So we look here, detained before the Lord. So doesn't quite say church, but he was where the priest was. He got the food from the priest, and then he noticed that some of Saul's employees were there. And so now he's fearful. So he asked the priest, do you have any weapons or do you have a sword? And the priest tells him, yes, I have Goliath's sword. In verse 9, David says, okay, give it to me. David fled from that place to Achish, the king of Gath. Again, just noting that language, it's not King Ashish, it's Ashish, the king of Gath, and the king is not capitalized, just letting us know who the person is. Okay. It says here the servants of Ashish said to him, but okay, I read that wrong. I thought this was Ashish himself saying it. So I might have mentioned that earlier, but that's again why I would like to go through detailed. So the servants of Achish said to him, is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing? Saul has struck down thousands, but David tens of thousands. This line of questioning, this response is making David nervous. So he begins to act crazy. He scratches at the doors. Okay, says he made marks on the door, scribbling on the doors, scratching on doors. Okay, and he let saliva fall into his beard. The King James Version says spittle in his beard. The king got mad and he said, why have you brought him to me?